In Dungeon Explorer, there are 6 different classes to choose from: Knight, Beast, Ninja, Monk, Elf, and Mage. In this video, I'll be going over these classes, how well they can perform in both solo and party play, and I'll also mention some tips on how to grind experience and gold. But before we get started, I should mention the stats. The life stat is how much health you have. This will only increase by leveling up. The other stats will only increase by getting better equipment, and these include attack power, which affects your damage output; intelligence, which affects how long your body force lasts, or I should say your character ability; your defense, which affects how much damage you take from enemies; and of course your agility, which affects how fast you move around the stage. So starting us off, we have the Knight, and he is the most basic of the 6 classes. Now his life stat is pretty good. He does gain a consistent amount of life per level, and he gains a lot of it, reaching over 2,000 life at level 60. And of course his end game stats is what you expect from a Knight. He can reach the maximum amount of attack points, which is 20 with the best weapon. With the best shield, his intelligence is 15, which is pretty low, but his defense can reach 18 with the best armor. Now another thing I should mention is that while his agility is at 2, it can reach 3 once he gets one of the better shields. Now his attack speed is average. He does attack a bit slower than most of the characters, but there is one other character that can match him, and there is one other character, I should say class, that is a bit slower in terms of attack speed. So overall, the Knight is decent. Now his body force ability is called Triple Slash. This allows him to attack 3 projectiles in an angle, a 3-way shot if you will. And it's pretty good because since it's 3 projectiles, that obviously means that when you're up close to an enemy, you'll be dealing more damage since all 3 projectiles will be hitting that enemy. So in terms of just a basic character, easy to use, you just get into the game and pick the Knight. The Knight is pretty dang good. He's not overpowered, but again, if you're just starting, he's a really good class. Because of this, I consider him a A rank in both solo and party play. Because if you're playing alone, you have good stats to back yourself up from the enemies, a good amount of life to take hits along with defense, and you get like good attack power. And of course in party play, when he gets like more levels, he can stay in the front lines and tank some hits. So yeah, really good character overall. Now next up we have the Beast, who is surprisingly a better tank than the Knight in some ways. Now the Beast does have the highest amount of life in this game. In fact, it can reach over 3,000 at level 60, which is pretty insane. And of course its end game stats is also really good. It can reach the max attack power of 20 when it gets the best weapon, 15 intelligence with the best shield, and a really good 19 defense with the best armor. Now the only downside to using the Beast over the Knight is that the Beast is slower when it comes to movement speed, and it does attack slightly slower than a Knight. In fact, it has the slowest attack speed in the game. However, it does make up for it by having a really good body force ability, which is called Freeze and Howl. Now during this ability, it will make the Beast glow, and not only will the Beast move faster and lag the game, but it'll also allow the Beast to attack with 2 projectiles. So this is a really good body force ability, especially in solo play, because not only does it make up for your agility, which is at 1 in the beginning. I should mention, just like the Knight, it does improve by getting better shields. It can reach 2 and then it can reach 3. But this body force does let you move faster, and it does give you more damage output since you're shooting 2 projectiles instead of 1. And yeah, it's not like 3 when it comes to the Knight. Like the Knight shoots 3 at a time during its body force, but since it's 2 and they're really close to each other, it's easier to hit an enemy with both of the axes, whereas with the Knight you have to be really close for all 3 projectiles to hit. So because the Beast has so much health and so much like attack and defense at endgame, I have to put the Beast in A tier for solo because it's not very fast. You're going to feel very slow for the beginning of the game. But for party play, I have to put him in S tier because like it's easy to tank with this guy. You just immediately put him in the front, like in front of the other players. You got a bunch of life quickly, and like you'll start getting your defense, and he is just a really good tank overall. Probably the best tank in my opinion. Now the Ninja is actually one of my favorite classes. In fact, I think he might be the most overpowered of the 6 classes. So his life stat is pretty strange. He does gain a ton of life up to level 10. Then it falls off kind of hard, but once he reaches level 40, he does start gaining a lot of life per level. Now his end game stats is amazing. He can reach 18 attack, 20 intelligence, and 20 defense. That's more defense than the Knight and the Beast, which is insane because that means that the Ninja can technically become a tank at endgame since you have a good amount of life and the maximum amount of defense in the game. if that wasn't good enough, his agility and attack speed is really good. He starts off with an agility of 4, which is insane. It can't get any higher without like getting equipment inside the levels or whatnot, but really high agility, only one other character matches him. So he can move really fast, which is really good for solo play. And his attack speed is the fastest in the game. In fact, there's only one other character that matches him in terms of attack speed. And yeah, even though he doesn't have 20 attack like the Beast and the Knight, because he attacks so fast, it more than makes up for it. Like his DPS is really good with the best weapon. All of that would be enough to make him a top tier class, but his body force is even better. So I'm gonna actually go into some enemies, and I'm going to use it right now. This body force makes him invisible, and for the duration the enemies will be confused, they can't see him, and he will shoot a projectile behind him. Now the projectile behind him isn't great, like there's not many situations where like it helps, like mostly you're just attacking from the front. But the invisibility is really good because it just makes it so easy to get through rooms. It is perfect for solo play, it is really overpowered. And especially the 4th dungeon in particular, where you have to like trigger traps that will like make enemies spawn. He can just turn invisible, take them all out before it runs out, and yeah, he's just a really overpowered class. So because of how good the ninja is, like just his stats, his agility, his attack speed, and even his body force, he is an S tier character in solo play. Like it's just, if you're trying to get through the game alone, this is a class to pick. And he is also an S tier character in party play as well, because again, like even during early game or like late game, he can become a tank. He can like go on the front lines. He still has like good DPS with his very fast attack speed, and even though his body force isn't as good in party play, that means that you can give the other players on your team the body force abilities. Like they can use it, and the ninja will still be very good without it. Easily an S tier character all around, best character in the game. You can't convince me otherwise. It's fine if you disagree, but I don't know, the ninja is just really strong in this game. Now next up is the monk, and I think he's one of the more weaker characters in this game, but he could potentially be really good. Now his life stat is pretty pathetic to say the least. The growth is really off for early game, but then it does get higher and higher as he gets more level up, so it'll take a lot of time for him to get a good amount of life. His end game stats is okay, but a bit questionable. He can reach 19 attack, which is really good, 18 intelligence, which is really useful for him since he's highly dependent on his body force ability, and 17 defense, which is alright. Now his agility is 3, which means that he does move at a decent pace, and his attack speed is the same as the knight. It is average. He doesn't attack too fast, but it is decent nonetheless, especially with 19 attack power. So the only reason I'd see anyone use the monk is for his body force ability, which is his what the manual calls the hammer cloud. When he activates it, 2 clouds will go around him, and these will deal contact damage to nearby enemies. Now the way the cloud works is that it is of course like every other body force, the duration depends on your intelligence, but the power of these clouds also depend on your attack power. So with the monk, you obviously want to rush attack and intelligence so that this body force is more and more effective. But the thing is that with this body force, you have to get close to enemies, and unless you're one-shotting them, that means you are going right into danger, and this is kind of dangerous to do early game because again, the monk's life stat is pretty low. So because the monk needs a lot of stats to get going, like I don't really think he's great early to mid game. I could be wrong. I didn't do enough, like I didn't put enough time into the monk to say that I'm confident in that. So for now, I think with solo play he is B tier because he takes a long while to get going, and he is very dependent on the body force ability. And for party play, he could be A tier, maybe B tier, I'm not sure. But I want to say just in case he is A tier in party play, because when it comes to bossing, he can be really effective in dealing damage. Now the elf is interesting because her early game is a bit weird, but her late game is pretty good. Now her life stat is awful early game because even at level 20 she only has 256, which is kind of pathetic. But surprisingly, up to level 40 she gains a ton of maximum life, so she can take some hits like during late game. It's really good. And her endgame stats is decent. She gets 17 attack, 19 intelligence, and 15 defense. Now the defense does look really low, but thankfully her body force does make up for it, and I'll get into that in a bit. Now the most important thing about the elf is that she has just as much agility and attack speed as the ninja, which means, as you expect, she can move just as fast around the screen, and she can attack just as fast as a ninja. So even though her attack can reach 17 at endgame, it's still really good because she has very fast attack speed to make up for it. Now the important part about the elf is her body force ability, which is called Air Shield. This shield will make her completely invincible to attack, and she can still attack during this ability. Now I think this ability is really good during solo play because, you know, in the early game you're not going to have much health, so you can use this to like make up for the low life you have. And even during end game, you can use this body force to like avoid those nasty like attack patterns, or maybe you're getting ganged up by like a bunch of enemies or whatnot. So it's really good early game because it pretty much increases her survivability, and she still has really good agility to avoid some fights in the first place. Now due to her life stat and how her body force ability works, I think the elf is an A tier character in solo play because, again, the defense doesn't matter. You have your body force to make up for it. You can protect yourself. You can get through the rooms. It's really good. But in team play, like in party play, I think she's a B tier character. And it really comes down to the fact that she doesn't have a lot to offer to the team. Like, I mean, yeah, she has good DPS. Her attack speed is very fast. She can reach a good amount of attack power. But she's not someone you should always give the body force like power-ups to. Like when the body force drops in a dungeon, because it's not like the ninja where maybe he could use it in a party play, like the invisibility and like attacking from behind. Really, her body force ability only affects herself, and if you're in party play, then most likely you can at least give her one body force just in case for like an emergency when she's getting attacked from behind. But it's much better off that the other characters have the body force ability, and considering that's like her main defining feature, she's not very great in party play. Like, you're much better off using the ninja is what I'm trying to say. So she is B tier in party play. I think she can be A tier. Like, she's not horrible, she's still really good. So you can just take this as my opinion. If you think she's A tier or maybe even S, then that's perfectly fine. Last but not least, we have the Mage, and this is a very hard character to judge, and I'll get into why right now. His life stat is awful. He has the lowest amount of life in the game. Even though he starts with 65, his life growth is pathetic. Even at level 60, he still can't get over 1,000 life, which is pretty bad. So he's very frail, and that's especially the case since his maximum amount of defense at endgame is 16. But he can still reach at least 16 attack power and 20 intelligence. Now his agility is average, it is at 3, so he can move pretty decently fast. And his attack speed is not as fast as the ninja and elf, but it's not as slow as the knight and the monk. He's kind of in between. Like, if the ninja is considered very fast and the knight is average, then I would consider the mage's attack speed fast. And he kind of needs it because his attack stat is pretty low. So the only reason you really use the mage is for his body force ability, and this is where the game either like, this body force will either make or break if you want to use the mage. So his body force is called Firestorm, and I'm going to have to see some enemies in order to showcase it. So when it activates, he will constantly activate a Firestorm that will constantly deal damage to any enemy that's on screen. Now the cool part about this ability is that like it's constantly dealing damage, it's constantly hitting them. Like iframes aren't really a thing, so it's just doing a ton of damage like every single hit, like every few frames pretty much. So it's a really great offensive. In fact, it's actually the best offensive body force in the game. However, there are two issues with his body force. One, similar to the monk, he is going to need a lot of attack and intelligence to make the most out of this. Like, it will deal more damage the higher his attack is, or last longer the higher his intelligence is, so it doesn't really shine into endgame. But the second problem, and this was like probably one of the worst moments I had in this game when I was like trying to play through it with the mage, his body force does not work against the final boss. It works against the other bosses. It will keep dealing damage to them. In fact, he can melt bosses if he has a ton of body force power-ups available, but it will not touch the final boss. Like, it just will not work, which is, especially if you're soloing this game, it makes facing the final boss a miserable experience unless you're doing a very hard grind. So because the mage has very low life, pretty low attack and defense even during endgame, and his body force doesn't even work against the final boss, I kinda have to put him in C tier for solo play because, like, again, he doesn't really shine into endgame. He's going to be very frail for most of the game, and his attack stat isn't high enough to like melt the enemy, so you're going to be depending on a lot of grinding, especially like when you're getting those equipment in the dungeons. Like, you're going to be very dependent on those in order to get far with the mage. But for party play, I think he's easily an A tier character, maybe even S, because, you know, he can take all of the body force power ups, like teammates can let him use it, and then when the team gets up to like a difficult room or maybe even the boss, he can just use all of them up, deal a ton of damage without even getting close. So in terms of team play, he is really good, and yeah, it still doesn't work against the final boss, but he can always just let the other characters start taking up the body force abilities at that final moment. So I think during team play he is excellent, but for solo play he might be the worst. Again, take it with a grain of salt, this is based off of my experience, so if you disagree, that is perfectly fine. So for those that are still watching the video, I can go over how to grind experience in gold. Now there's a simple way to do this and there's an advanced way to do this, but the advanced method will require some level ups and some really strong weapons. So I'll go over the basic way first, and you can do this as early as the start of the game. So I will be picking the elf just to demonstrate this. You can pick whoever you want, it doesn't really matter. But I think for the case of gold, you should pick either the elf or the ninja since they are the fastest. So to grind gold, you want to go down here, and when you go to Freedom Hill, you will see 4 different gold pieces, which is right here. So when you collect all of them, you get about 190 gold, and then what you want to do is save the game. Then you want to quit the game and load it, and then you want to load your save data, go back to Freedom Hill, and the gold will come back. So I'll just show an example real quick. I'm going to save it right here and then quit. Then I'm going to load my save data. And now if I go back to Freedom Hill, the gold will be back. So let's check it out right now. And there it is. So you might think this is like a glitch or an exploit, like maybe the developers forgot about this, but funny enough, the manual actually mentions this method. Like, it will even say like do this until like extreme boredom kicks in or whatever. It's pretty funny. So yeah, obviously this was intended, like this was an intended way to grind gold, because the thing with gold is that it's kind of hard to split it up against like when you're playing with 2 or more people. So sooner or later, like there's going to be some gold grinding that would need to be done for everyone to have like good equipment and whatnot. As for grinding your experience, it's very simple. So all you want to do is go down here, and unlike the gold where you should be using the elf or the ninja since they can get it quickly with the high agility, for grinding your experience you can use whoever you want. Now this will only work if you haven't cleared the first dungeon yet, so you want to go down this path right here and you will see some blue jellies. Now this is actually the entrance to the first dungeon. Like, you have to keep going through this path to find the entrance to it, and then after you complete it, these jellies won't spawn anymore, I think. But the cool thing about these enemies is that they don't hurt you and they give you experience points. And even more important than that is that but the most important part is that they keep spawning, so all you gotta do is just stay here and just hold the attack button. And the way experience works in this game is that for every enemy you kill, you get 1 experience points, or I should say 1 point of experience. Now this goes for the enemies at endgame as well, so because it works this way, grinding the weaker enemies is more effective than grinding the stronger enemies, because all enemies give 1 point of experience. So if you're just starting the game, or maybe like one of your friends is behind on levels, they can just come over here, hold the attack button, and you'll just keep grinding experience. Now keep in mind, this is going to take a while obviously, and you also have to watch for your food meter, because once that reaches 0 over time, it will then start draining your life, and once your life gets low, that's when you should head back to the base so that you can recover all of your food and all of your health. So really simple way to grind experience in this game. Again, any character can do it, it doesn't matter what equipment you have or if you're at level 1, because the jellies can't hurt you, they die in 1 hit and they'll keep spawning, so you just stay right here and hold the attack button. Now the advanced way to get experience in gold is pretty interesting. So for this trick, you're going to need a really strong weapon. Usually I'd say maybe the final weapon your character can get, for the ninja can kind of get away with using the second to last weapon, but other than that, you should have a really strong weapon nonetheless. So what I'm going to do is actually switch characters. I'm going to switch to one of my stronger characters actually. So for this example, I will pick, let's see, I'll pick the ninja. Since he's at level 23, he has the second to last weapon and it's just enough to do this XP trick. So you want to go down, you want to go back to where all of the paths are. And then you want to go to the right. And you want to take the road that's to the bottom right, like this bridge over here. So once you go right here, you want to immediately hold the attack button. And by doing this, you'll grind gold faster than the jellies, because even though these enemies, like I said, the stronger enemies don't give you any more experience, but the difference here is that you can see that they're moving faster, they're spawning faster, so you actually get experience at a much faster rate than if you fight the jellies. But again, do keep in mind that they are stronger, so you need a good weapon, like right here, in order to take them out in 1 or 2 hits. It should be 1 hit really, because I think in 2 hits they would just overwhelm you and you just die or whatever if you're not paying attention. But yeah, if you have a strong enough weapon, you just go here and you just hold the attack button and you get XP at a faster rate than if you're fighting the jellies. So now that I show that off, I get to show the most important part about this game, which is the advanced way to grind gold. Now, this is a bit weird because to grind gold in the advanced method, it's actually better if you have 4 players playing with you. And I'll get into why in a bit, but for this example, I will be doing this alone. So I'm going to pick my endgame wizard, who is completely equipped out. He has all of the best equipment. And the wizard is actually the best character to do this with because this method will require us to face a boss, and since this boss can actually get attacked by his spell, which is his Firestorm ability, it is very, very good at melting the boss really fast. So this gold method, it will require you to be pretty strong. You don't have to be as strong as I am here. I think level 20 to 30 is fine, as long as you have like, if you at least have the best weapon and some good armor, you should be able to manage. But yeah, when you go into this dungeon over here, you'll find some enemies. You can't take them out normally, and you can access this dungeon as early as like the start of the game, but again, those enemies are pretty difficult and the boss is even more difficult, so it's preferred that you actually have some equipment for when you get to this part. So you want to activate the 2 switches in this room. There's one, and there will be 1 more switch to the right, and then that will activate the boss that is guarding the entrance to the final dungeon. Now, even if you beat this boss, like if you never played this game before, even if you beat the boss that is guarding the entrance to the final dungeon, you can't actually enter it until you destroy, I should say, finish all 6 dungeons in the game. So this isn't a way to like speed through the game or like speed run it and just skip. Like you actually do have to do all of the other 6 dungeons in order to do the final one. Now this boss, pretty simple. It has 3 phases. The first phase is pretty easy. You just want to stay in the corner and just keep attacking. Now, if you have 3 other players with you, they should just stay in the corner too. They can stay all the way in the bottom right or the bottom left. I'm just staying a little bit at the top, but if I want to, I could just go over here and I'll still be able to deal damage to him. And because my wizard has the highest amount of attack and intelligence, I can actually destroy 1 form of the boss in 2 spells. And you'll see that in a bit. I just need to deal enough damage first. Now, the reason why I mentioned having other players, well, 1, if the other players have some good stats too, it's easier because they'll be attacking as well. The bosses don't scale in HP or damage, so you can actually take them out faster with multiple players. But more importantly, the amount of gold you get depends on how many players are alive when the boss is defeated. So there's the first form, and from here I'm not even going to attack. I'm just going to activate the ability. You can see how much, like, look at the amount of hits it's dealing. It's really, really good. And that should be it. Oh, okay, so I do need to hit the boss a few times to there we go. Okay, so 2 body forces almost destroys 1of the forms. All right, so I'm just going to do it again and then 1 more time. Another fact, body force abilities does last shorter. Like they don't have as long of a duration in boss battles. It's about half the duration, so keep that in mind. And yeah, for defeating this boss, you get a good amount of that experience and you get 4,000 gold. Now, here's the important part to this trick. 4,000 gold isn't a lot. Like, some of the best equipment costs like 9,800. It's a lot, right? If you're playing with 2 players, like there's just 2 people, and both are alive when the boss is defeated, you get 6,000 gold. If it's 3 players, 8,000, and if it's 4 players, it's 10,000, which is enough to get any of the best equipment in the game. So the trick to this method is you want to like buy a weapon and whatnot. I'll show you an example here. And let's say if I don't know, for some silly reason I wanted to downgrade to the staff, right? Obviously I wouldn't, but I'm just showing an example. You'd buy the equipment, then you want to go down here, and this, like, you just bought, like, you was playing with 3 other players, you got 10,000 gold, and you got like the best weapon for like one of the characters, right? You want to save the game, so save it, and then you want to quit. And then when you go back to the menu, press start, and you want to delete the save. So I'm going to go to data clear, and I'm going to delete the save data that I just saved, which is the beginning, because remember, that entrance to the final dungeon, you can access it at any time. So you want to clear it. And the reason why we do this, and then we want to start a new game, is because here's the thing. And I'm going to actually fast forward through this. The boss doesn't respawn when you go back there. So the way it works is that you beat the boss once, you save it so that your character keeps the equipment you just bought with the gold you earned. Then you clear the save and start a new one. But the game still remembers that you bought the equipment. It still remembers that your character has that equipment. Like, it won't forget your characters even if you delete the save. Like, those are 2 different things in that sense, because you still need to save it for the character to have it. But yeah, even though I just did a data clear, the boss will actually be back if I try to attempt him again. So the trick is pretty self-explanatory. You beat the boss once, you buy equipment, you save it, data clear, you start a new game, and then you just do the same trick again. Just like defeat the boss again, buy another equipment, save the data, and then clear it, and then start over and over. So it sounds hard, like it sounds unnecessary, but this is actually much faster than just like going back to Freedom Hill to get like 190 gold per reset. Especially if you're playing with like 2 or more people, and you know, like grinding gold takes so long. It's just better off if like, yeah, I just kept getting 10,000 per like boss attempt, and then everyone's decked out for like the final dungeon or something like that, or for the end game. But yeah, that is my video, or I should say explanation on Dungeon Explorer, the classes and how to grind experience in gold. I hope this video was helpful in some way, and with that said, I'll see you later.